Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. That is because I'm joined by my wife,
Woo-hoo!
Taylor. Woo! How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Thanks for having me on your podcast, babe.
I'm very happy to have you on my podcast.
I wasn't sure if you'd ever asked me to be on it because, putting me behind a mic, a little risky.
It's slightly risky, but that's why there's some great editing softwares out there.
We love those.
Just kidding. No. I have been excited to have you on because we get to talk about our life together. Like I'm always talking about our life, but now it's time to go straight to the source.
There you go.
A little proof checking and, just make sure that we're on par. So
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good.
I love it.
Well, let's talk a little bit. Let people get to know you a little bit. So you grew up in Fergus Falls, Minnesota.
Yep.
What's the saying of your high school?
Owayo.
What does that mean?
Otters are always otters.
That's
our mascot.
That's so profound.
You'll never fully understand. You didn't go there. He didn't go there.
I've teased her about that just because like otters are always otters. Like otters are sometimes beavers. Like it doesn't.
You're going to make
sense.
a lot of people mad right there with that comment.
Sorry to all my otter friends out there. But yeah, you grew up in Fergus. And what was just kind of life like growing up? And how did you come to know Jesus?
Life was awesome in Fergus. I grew up in a Christian home and went to church. Really close with my sister, Sarah, honestly, still to this day, super close. And parents that love Jesus, that love being involved in our life and have always been the most helpful, there present parents ever. So I'm just really blessed.
So true. It's so true. Your family's the best.
Because of my mom right now, I can be here.
Yeah, she is watching.
She's watching the kids. So.
Today is
Mama Monk Day.
Mama Monk Day, which we decided let's just do the episode after work and let her stay with the kids a little bit longer. They'll love it.
It was either this or trying to set up something at our house, and
that would have been a lot of work.
Just a lot of work.
I'm glad this worked out.
Shout out to Mama Monk.
Shout out to Mama Monk. Yeah, you went to MSUM and I went to NDSU, and that's kind of how we met. Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorite stories, but why don't you tell it from your perspective? How did you meet your husband?
How did you meet me? So our first date, or just
how we met?
How we met. Oh yeah. Okay, so I was a freshman, came to MSUM, and I remember knowing of Chi Alpha, the college ministry, and being like, I'm gonna be a part of that. That sounds awesome. And getting literally going up to the table on welcome week, being like, hey, I know you guys meet at Thursdays at 8 at this place. I was telling them, and they were like, okay, cool. cool.
We'll see you there.
So jumped into that, and then I met Ashley, who is my small group leader.
Shout out Ashley Ham.
We're gonna be doing lots of shout outs. I'm kind of in a shout out mood. Shout out Ashley.
Last week's episode, Ryan set the record for shout outs.
Oh,
so
we'll
see if we can break it. We'll see if we can break it today.
All right, cool. Someone keep tally.
Yes.
But anyway, so she was my small group leader, and I remember she was telling Ryan, her husband, and you, I have this girl in my small group who's kind of funny. You should ask her to be on H-Joy. And I remember being no, I don't want to do that.
H-Joy was the improv comedy kind of ministry of Chi Alpha at the time, where we would do improv shows on campus and we'd travel to do them. It was very fun. But yes, so she wanted you to be an H-Joy.
Wanted me to be on H-Joy, and they would do it at fall retreat. And I remember going to fall retreat being oh my gosh, this is make or break of my reputation. I could be known as this freshman girl that's just not funny, nothing lands, or I could be known as oh yeah, Taylor, she's that funny girl on H-Joy. But I remember being so sick to my stomach. I did not enjoy fall retreat my freshman year because my mind was just make or break of reputation. Are you funny or not? And that's how I met you.
It is.
We literally kind of introduced ourselves, and then it was game time, and we started doing H-Joy games.
Yes. And
that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, because my first memories of you, like obviously Ashley, like came running up and was like, "You have to have," and typically like the people that we would include were people that were safe. There were people that we were like, okay, we can trust like what's going to come out of their mouth, and the environment itself is like we need to have some sort of reins on this. And so we don't always like just let people that we'd have no knowledge of. Like we didn't know
Wild
you.
card.
And we knew Ashley. Ashley's a little crazy. She's got this funny friend. Let's see what happens. Yes. And I feel like it's one of those safe to say like the rest is history.
Wow.
No, just kidding. But yeah, you did that, and you actually like blew everybody out of the water, and you had everybody like rolling on the ground laughing. Like that's the memory I have, is the faces and the voices that this little unknown freshman from MSUM,
this little blonde freshman over there just making voices.
the queen of faces and voices.
You know what? You have to own it. That was my thing.
Yes.
Just make a face, make a voice.
And it crushed. But yeah, so we started, you were on like the team officially, and we would do these events and stuff, but we never like, at least at that point, it wasn't at all romantic. I had been dating somebody else, and it was just seasons of life and stuff. I know that was Ashley's kind of like thought. I love the fact that we came to an event and we were both wearing twins hats, and Ashley's like, "Oh my gosh, like
you like
it's meant to be."
Get married like someday because you're both wearing twins hats.
That's as simple as it is. Just dress like a girl and say, "Hey, I think we're supposed to be together." But yeah, so I feel like our friendship was kind of intermittent. We would
it was like seasonal.
Yeah, we would have these events, and so we would gear up for like a month or two leading up to the event. And so we would all get together, play the games, have fun. But our friendship was just like
goofy.
Solely goofy.
Like we're wearing wigs, putting on costumes.
Yes, we were acting like children, like as a group. Like this was our friend group, Tom and Logan and Sam and Austin.
Yes.
Oh, what a great group
all the
of people.
So fun.
But yeah, we just kind of got to know each other in that environment, and then it was like, not once, I don't think there was like this conversation of like, oh man, like we should date, or
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of, that was the way it was. And then I remember resurfacing. I had gotten out of a relationship and was kind of in like my swear off dating phase. Every person's had one, I feel like. But I was kind of like, all right, I just need to take some time and just chill out for a while. And then our like friend groups converged once again.
Yep.
And then
you just kind of started showing up like at the places that I was at with my friends.
It's true. Well, that was like after like we kind of had like an organic like clash of all the friends again.
Yeah.
And then I remember Ashley once again being involved and like setting up like a group hangout where we could be there together and stuff. And we had like one time we were going to spend time together, and I thought it was like roommates. All my roommates were home. I invited you over, and we were just I was going to be like a safe place to like hang out. I was like starting to go, I think Taylor's really cool, and for some reason I don't want to like not be around her. So I had you over, and then all my roommates just were like, peace.
And I like internally remember was like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? Is this okay? And
it wasn't, I know some people are thinking like smooth. Tell the roommates like, hey guys, get lost. I'm going to invite her to a roommate hangout. But yeah, they just all like left, had plans. And then
do you remember what we did?
Well, of course I remember what we did. It was what was the soundtrack?
Was it
Tron? Or we
what
played like
epic.
We
like,
played like
soundtrack,
yeah, oh yeah,
like
it was the Hans Zimmer Hans Zimmer soundtrack on like Spotify.
Yes.
And it was just all intense music, and then we basically did improv.
We literally like had a sword fight. Like you had your like foam swords, and we were just
again,
like
we
slow
acted
motion
like children.
Started fighting each other, and then I remember like at the end of the song I was just like, yeah.
Yes.
And then
a slow motion murder.
end scene, and then it was like the song ended, and we were just kind of like, okay, cool. Like, we just like,
what you talking about?
all right, now what do we do?
Yeah. So it's funny. Like there's so many more fun little things. Like
Oh, yeah.
our first official date was my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I was just hanging out on my birthday, and I was like, seems like a good opportunity to have a half off date. So I reached out and said, let's go get Tutti Frutti.
I'll buy yours because mine is free.
I'll buy yours. How romantic.
We love a frugal man.
A frugal man. Your mom would love a frugal man.
Yes.
For sure. So,
yes.
yeah, so we went, but what was.
Well, I just remember, like, you texting me that I was on campus in the library, like, studying for something, like, greasy hair, like, baseball hat, sweatpants, and I was just like, well, gotta go. Like, I saw that text, and I literally packed my bag, and I started running because I was, like, so excited. And it was February, so it was cold and icy, and I'm just, like, trucking it to my apartment. And I remember rounding a corner to the apartment, and I biffed it so hard on the snow, on the sidewalk, just, like, completely covered in snow. But I popped right back up because I did not care, because Stephen Glosser just asked me on a date, and I was really excited. And then I was also like, I'm not really going to get ready for this date. Like, he's just going to have to, like, accept that I'm going to have greasy hair and I'm going to wear a baseball hat. There's just no going back. And I kind of was like, you got to start low. And then it's like, whoa, look, I curled my hair today. Now look at you.
Wow, you're taking steps forward.
I really am.
No, yeah. It's so fun, though. Like, that first date, like, it wasn't like every question was answered. I feel like because our friendship was so, like, deeply formed in just, like, the fun side of things, like, that was probably our first deeper conversation. Like, that was probably the first time we'd ever, like, talked about, like, dreams and vision for our lives and, you know, ministry callings and all those things. So when you already had that, like, deep friendship level kind of, like, not figured out, but we loved to hang out. Like, we loved to be around each other. So, yeah, it was kind of like, all right, move forward from there. And I know that summer, Steve and Aaron, two of our other best friends, like, it's kind of fun when you have two sets of best friends. Like, the girls were your best friends, the guys were mine, and then they all married each other. It makes for a really fun life.
Amazing.
But we got asked to drive to Alaska with Steve and Aaron to help them move when they moved to Anchorage. And so we drove 60 hours with them in one little car in a Toyota Camry, and we just drove through Canada up to Alaska. And I remember after that trip, like, the trip was amazing, super fun, just being with them in that kind of huge transition for them. But coming back, and we flew back into Minneapolis, your parents picked us up, and we were hanging out on the deck, and I was tanning with your dad, I'm pretty sure. In my memory of that, David, you could fact check that. But we were tanning on the deck, and you went inside or something. Like, you weren't out there, and your dad's just like, so you gonna marry my daughter now? You should probably know.
You just spent 60 hours with her.
Yeah. And,
did you get sick of her?
And I didn't get sick of you. And I was like, I would love to. I didn't, like, ask him there. Yeah. Speaking of.
Oh, cool. Since you brought it up.
Yeah. But it was about a year later, less than a year later, we did get married. Mm-hmm. And as they say, the rest is history.
Now we can say the rest is history.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's all been easy. Nothing. No, but yeah. So we've been married. It'll be 7 years in May.
Like a month.
In a month.
Yep.
Which is really fun. We have 2 kiddos. I've mentioned Kinsley and Summit, and obviously a third kiddo. When we got in and started recording, Taylor's like, do I look fat? I'm like, you look 8 months pregnant. Like, that's
like, is this a bad angle? Like, what should I do with my hands?
If we put the camera, like, right up here, you know.
No double
but yeah,
chins
so we
here.
have our third coming really any week now, and that's part of the reason I said let's just do the podcast now.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be a long time if we don't.
That's very true. This is definitely easier.
I've mentioned the kiddos, but I just wanted to take a few minutes for us to kind of, like, describe the kiddos and what they're like. So let's start with Kinsley. You go first.
Kinsley is amazing. She's funny. She's feisty. Like, she is so, I just love her. Like, she's so strong-willed, but, like, so, I don't even know. Like, there's so many ways you could describe Kinsley. It's, like, hard she's like a Sour Patch Kid. Like there's moments that she is so sour, but then there's moments that she's so sweet, and you just like, you just can't.
But she's very independent. She's
but we also like love it. Like
right.
We foster it. We're just like, you know what? Let's hone in on this independence because she's gonna go places.
Well, that's always been like our desire. Like we didn't have, when we thought of the name Kinsley, we get asked this all the time. Like we didn't have like a profound
meaning.
Like we kind of think we want to give our children like meaning to their name, and we want to see and speak into what we see in them. But we did find like this personality test for Kinsley. It was like the personality of people named Kinsley, and this was before she was born, and it was like wild and adventurous, super sweet, super, like independent, all these things. And it's kind of crazy to like think. I was gonna try to find it.
Yeah, seriously, it was so spot on to like who Kinsley is.
Yeah,
and how. Yeah,
but she's like the ultimate, like kindness is her thing. Like she loves being kind. I asked her one night, like, why are you so kind? And she said, Jesus. I was like, Sunday school answer, but great,
I know. Well, then she's also just like such a helper. Like she wants to help with everything. And I mean, there's times where it's like, okay, I just need to take some deep breaths because like, would I love to just be able to get through what I want to get through? Absolutely. But like, she just loves to like be alongside and help however she can. And so it's just like allowing space for her to like be independent and learn and do all the things. Like she cooks with me all the time, and I have to find jobs that she can do. And
well, it's, patience isn't always like a strong suit for me, but having a daughter like her has
grown that
tremendously, because that is one of our philosophies in parenting, is that we want to give the kids like space to like explore who they are, and that's been so fun to see Kinsley like in the morning run to get cereal for not only herself but her brother, and she gets the milk out and
grabs her stool, drags it to one side of the kitchen to get this thing, and then drags it to the other side.
And there's messes.
Oh.
But we just embrace the mess. There's like that saying, don't cry over spilled milk. Like that is like a motto in our home.
Yep.
because
it's every day.
It's every day.
She's gotten better though. She's like pretty skilled.
She's actually really good at pouring. And I've had people comment on that before.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. Like I don't know where we were, but she was pouring something like from a full bottle into her cup. Like she always likes to do that. And she was pouring it really high. Like you would as a joke. Was that
one of those like videos, the like church video?
Well, she did that too. She was pouring in that church video she's in. But yeah, she's our like adventurous,
but also like a mama hen.
Yep.
She's like told me multiple times, like, I'm gonna feed the baby bottles, but you're gonna change his diaper, and like, but I'll get you the wipes, and like tells me all the things she's gonna do to help.
She definitely has like your facial expressions. She's very expressive,
animated. Yes.
Very animated. Yes. And she's also a roughhouser though. Like she was putting on her makeup this morning, but also she can play football and tackle. Yeah. Like with the best of them.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Kinsley, she's the best. She's definitely daddy's girl.
Oh yeah.
Has always been that way. Like she loves you, like has a great relationship with you, but sometimes
it's kind of like when
to our detriment.
Yeah. When we're in a room together, like I'm nothing. She's just like, a daddy do it. A daddy do it. I'm like, but I am right here.
Yeah.
Like, let me help you.
We're working on that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then there's Summit.
Sweet old Summit.
So Summit's name, it wasn't like the super profound thing. You loved the name and brought it to me, and I was like, I've never heard of it. I've heard of that as like an object, but not as a name. Let me think about that. But just like the profoundness of, for us, just like, especially in that season of our life, of just the biblical concept of the mountain where Jesus would go and get away to pray. And like, that was partially the season we were in when he was born, of just feeling like that was kind of where we were at, but also just that significance of that place to meet God. I think that's what I think of. And then Joshua, his middle name, my cousin, the Bible narrative is one of my favorites. And so, yeah, there's lots of things, but Tell me about Summit.
Okay, well, Summit, like, I'd say from like
Old Summit and New Summit.
I was gonna say like 0 to 2, so sweet, like so. I mean, he still is, but like so sweet, mellow, chill. Like honestly, like when we brought him home from the hospital, I remember realizing, oh wow, like he's a very low maintenance baby.
Yeah.
Compared to what Kinsley was, and like I remember like feeding him in the middle of the night and then like expecting like, oh man, it's going to be like, how many hours is it going to take to get this baby back to sleep? But he would literally like,
we used to do Kinsley based on how
like
many episodes of a show we could watch.
Oh, we had a 4 episoder night. Oh, only a 1 episoder.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah. But yeah, no, Summit, I remember he would just be like sleeping. And I was like, wait, what? So I just like can lay you down now and like you're just content.
No rocking.
Like you don't want snuggles. Oh, okay, cool. This is weird, but yeah, he was like so chill, and then too like because of his personality being so chill, like he just started to like he was eating but then not moving, so then he just got really large and like didn't show any interest in moving for a long time.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like so stressed about it because I'm like, he's not hitting his milestones. And like, I remember you're always like, just, it's okay. It'll buff out.
Fine. Oh, yeah.
It'll buff out. Steven's famous line to me.
I think I lost that line after Kinsley though, because you hated it so much.
Yeah. I was like, don't tell me that. Don't tell someone who's stressed and worried that things are going to buff out.
It's true. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
I've learned that.
Yeah. Just don't say that. But anyways, I remember like he had to be in physical therapy just to kind of like give him that push to, because he's just so like, kind of go with the flow.
He was content to just sit in the corner and like play with one toy or look at the same book.
He was just very content. And then 2 hit. Yeah. And now we're entering like a new phase of Summit.
Yeah, he's our wrecking ball. He's our like
boy.
Just the other day, Kinsley was like jumping off the couch, like from the back of the couch, and I was catching her. And then Summit was like, oh, that looks fun. Yeah. But I wasn't watching anymore. And so he just full like squirreled down to the ground, like flying squirrel down to the ground and just like, and then got up. Like he gets hurt, but not really. Yeah. And so, but yeah, he like loves sports, loves balls, loves trucks, loves dinosaurs. Just last night, he was running around our house like, I'll move the mic a little bit. And he like shakes. His face like.
And it's just like, oh, wow. And I'm like, scary dinosaur.
Scary dinosaur.
Oh, but yeah. So now he's just kind of crazy.
Crazy, but like super fun. Still very snuggly and sweet.
Oh, yeah.
He hasn't lost like the snuggly and sweet portion, but now he's just like 100% energy. And
yeah. He's in go mode.
He gets the late night zoomies every night. He just starts running through the house and tackling his sister and running into walls and everything else.
Oh, yeah. So, like, when people come over to our house, it's kind of just like, we kind of pre-warn them, just like, it's chaotic.
Yeah, it gets a little chaotic. But that's how we like it.
I know. It makes things fun. Keeps it interesting. But yeah.
It does.
So, overall, though, Summit, so sweet. Absolutely adore him.
Yes.
Love. I mean, we love our kids.
But it's been so much fun, building our family together. Like, I feel like everybody has their own family experiences, and then when you get married and it's like a dream for a while, and then you actually start to like talk about it, and then it actually happens, and it's like, whoa. And sometimes it feels like it's off the rails a little bit. Like we're just trying to like maintain like our sanity and our kids' sanity and safety.
Yep. But
just to like have the deep conversations that we get to have about like the things that when our kids one of the things that we talk about is that we're not just raising toddlers, we're raising 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds. So the things that we're discipling now are things that we hope are a part of them forever, and so I know one of the things that we try to do is like talk about Jesus as normal as possible and as often as possible, that Jesus isn't church Jesus and like home is different. It's no, like we invite Jesus into our home, and we don't do it perfect. I don't want anybody to think like, oh wow, they have perfected parenting. That's the farthest from the truth, but it's just like those creating those moments for us to have those conversations. And Easter was one of those where we were taking communion at church, and Kinsey was just asking like what we were doing, and I think she mainly wanted to drink the juice.
What do you got in that cup,
But
Mom?
she was also interested, and it was so fun for me, like in my brain, like how do I explain the blood of Jesus? This isn't actually that, but it represents that to like a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old. So
well, and then it was like Easter Sunday that night. She goes, Mom, can you tell me a Jesus story as I'm putting her to bed? And then she goes, wait, let me tell you one. And then she just started talking about Jesus. And I'm like,
when she used to like,
just love it.
We lived in a friend's house for the summer, and there was like a painting of Jesus, and she went up to it and she said, that's my Jesus. And she always calls it my Jesus. And so she has like the most tender heart for him and for the Lord. And she's really quick to want to pray at dinner. And I've just loved that. I don't think I could pinpoint like, oh, this is what we did to create that by any means. But other than just trying to model it and, you know, let her just run with it. So it's been really fun, and thankful for like an awesome church that also feeds into that too. So, but I kind of wanted to talk a little bit too. Obviously it's just been fun. I think, sometimes when I do a lot of talking, I think you're so amazing and special that I know you're not going to come up on stage with me and like preach a message, but I figured this would be a fun environment for people to get to know you a little bit too. But obviously for our story, we don't have to go super in depth in this part, but we got married and I was already a campus pastor. I was already working with Chi Alpha. So what was that experience like for you? You kind of came over from MSUM to NDSU and were Pastor Stephen's wife. So what was that? I mean, that's
no. And I mean, even like still to this day, sometimes like at church, like I'm just known as Pastor Stephen's wife, and I like love it. I'm like, yeah, I'm Taylor, but like I'm also Pastor Stephen's wife, and it's a great title.
But what was that season like for you?
I loved it. Like, and I knew that was just like right up my alley. And I knew too that like I'm not a upfront, like that's just not like what I feel is like a calling for me or like in my gifting. And so I just knew that I was going to be excited to like hang out with girls and like have people over and like open up our home and just like hang out and chill. And just like I feel like my motto has always been like I want people when they come over to my house to know like, oh, you can like put your feet up on our coffee table. Like you don't have to take your shoes off. Like you can just like do what makes you comfortable kind of thing. And so I just knew that coming into like when we first got married, coming into doing Chi Alpha with you, I was like so excited and it was awesome. I just got to like hang out with people.
Yeah. It was like, for me, I was in my dream job in the sense, like I was in a place where I felt like, I mean, we'll talk about it more, but I thought I was going to retire a Chi Alpha missionary. Like I just loved Chi Alpha. But there's also like challenges to it too, you know, just one, me being so invested in like from the get-go at NDSU. I was in my 6th year like on campus, and you know, one thing that I really struggled to do is like you just mentioned who you were and like how you felt like you could fit in. Like I didn't always see that. Like I didn't recognize that, and I didn't have like this vision of you preaching every other week or like anything like that. But at the same time, it was harder for me to like in that season see who God made you to be and how you can really love and serve in that season. And so I think we didn't fight, but like we had tension. Yeah. Just uncommunicated tension that kind of caused us to like really have to fight for like our mutual calling together, you know?
Right. Because I remember you always being like, I don't want this to just be my thing, and like wanting to do it together. And we were, but it was just the, like you said, the uncommunicated, like, I just felt like a little bit like intimidated almost, or just like felt like there was an expectation. And I kind of felt like intimidated almost, of just like, I'm not like at Stephen's level. Like, he reads his Bible differently. He does things like differently to grow closer to Jesus. And then I started to like shut down, I remember. But like, we didn't talk about that. And it was just kind of like, you would kind of be frustrated. I would be frustrated, but we just like, it was just like that first year of marriage, just like figuring out how do you communicate. And like, we just didn't. No, I'm just
For
kidding.
sure.
We just, we
no.
just didn't do a good job.
You can like be prepared as much as you can be and read the books and have the conversations, but until you're there, it's just like a totally different animal.
Yep.
And that was part of our early on struggles too, was just connecting on a spiritual level. We, and I think that's for a lot of people, like you meld that together. And I think there's maybe like a narrative or a story of like the ideal marriage is they get up early in the morning and they read their Bibles side by side or out loud, and then they pray together. And, and that just didn't really work for us. Like just mornings wise, or like our routines just didn't really fit into that kind of like story. And I think there was frustration there. And we've talked about it before, but I feel like I treated you like a small group guy sometimes. Like, come on, read your Bible and pray. Come on, let's do this. Like, I'm going to hold you accountable. And I didn't like serve you and love you like a husband should through that. And it took us a while to kind of come to a point where that changed,
Right. Yeah, I remember that. And I always like shut down in those like situations, because I just felt like I'm not doing a good job, like just kind of like shut down, even though, but I feel like then like you started to like actually, like you were very like gentle about it, and just like you communicated like your heart and your desire for me to grow closer to Jesus. And like, you were so sweet about it, and you would like make little like reading plans that we could like do together. And like, you were just like, you just tried really hard. And I love that. And it meant a lot too, because I was just like, I know, like, I don't know.
Well, and I do feel like at the end of the day, that was more communication than anything. Because it was like you were a shutdown, and I was like
let's fix
it. Let's figure it out. And so in that situation, when there's like this spiritual level to it, it was very hard for us to navigate that. And then also just being in a position of leadership where everybody was looking at us. Like, I know I struggled, especially those first few years of ministry and marriage, obviously, of just like where we're at now in ministry is kind of a 180 in some things, like philosophically, of just never did I aim to like be perfect or act like I had it all together, but I was really scared to like be found out as a fraud because like I didn't have it all together. Right. Now we're just kind of open.
I know.
We're open books, and just we are what we are, and that is in process of Jesus changing our lives continually, And so I like the pressure's off, I guess, which has been kind of the really fun part of our new season of life and ministry, is like pressure's off to like act a certain way or be a certain person. Like we are who we are, and we love that. We
are who we are, but also like a lot of like our ministry is just like in our home. And so it's like, you're really seeing like, no, this is like who we are, because like first, like we're parents, like you're seeing how we're dealing with like Naked Summit running around because he's potty training. And it's like, oh, okay, just dealing with that. Like you're truly seeing.
Well, it's like discipline. Like we don't wait for the guests to leave and then just like come down on the kids. Like, all right, you guys did that. Like we just discipline in front of people because it's better for the kids, but also, or I mean, like not like, it's not like we're like yelling at them in front of the kids, but discipline for us is like a gentle conversation on their level of, do you know what's going on? Like, why are you acting this way?
Yeah. What was it? Like Kinsley demanding things of me. And I was just like, let's try that again.
Yeah.
How could you ask mom nicely for for some juice?
When I had that Nate and Winnie lead all, like,
oh yeah, I remember watching them be parents, and I was like,
I just remember like
take notes.
Not that she would anymore, but Amaya would like do something and get in trouble. Amaya is like perfect. No, she's amazing. But we would have staff meetings at their house, and she would be doing something. And for me, like, kids in a staff meeting was very new. I didn't have kids. And so it was louder and kind of chaotic or whatever. And like, I just remember Whitney just like getting on her level and just like whispering in her ear, and then Amaya's face like turning to a smile and like giving a hug. And I was like, whatever happened there. Yeah, whatever happened there was really cool.
Yes, I totally
I'm sure it wasn't always
that.
like that for them, but that was like vision for me.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I desire. Yeah, it was super fun. But so we were in Chi Alpha. Well, I was in Chi Alpha for a total of 6 years, and I think you were there for 5. And then it was about, I think, like April of 2018 where we just we were preparing for Kinsley. She was due in June, and I remember putting her nursery together. We had set up the crib. Shout out Dave and Alyssa Liedall. They gave us their crib. We still use it.
Use it for all our kids.
And we were setting up the crib, and I had kind of had something in my heart for a while of, as much as I'd loved Chi Alpha, like, I just had this pit, like, thinking that something was changing and God was calling us into something else, and we didn't know what that was at that time. Do you remember that conversation and what that was like for you?
Vividly.
What was that like for you?
I mean, I just remember sitting on Kinsley's rocking chair, and you was like crying on my lap because you felt bad that you were feeling that way, and like right before we're gonna have a kid, and
when your mom had just retired, and
there was just like a lot of potential transition happening, and I just remember you like felt bad and was like trying to communicate it, and I was just trying to process like, I'm just about to have a kid, like all this stuff. And I remember that day like vividly, and I remember just being like, no matter what we do, or like no matter what, like, I'm in your corner always, like I'll back you up, even if that's like what you're sharing with me is kind of like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming, I can't handle this right now. But I do remember just being like, we're in this together, we're a team, whatever it looks like, we'll figure it out. But what was your question? I lost my train of thought.
I was just asking, like, what was that? Do you remember that night? And what was that?
Oh, yeah.
No, and I remember that too. Like, I think the reason I was so hesitant to like share it was because, one, I was hoping that like I would just change, like my heart would change, and it would just be like, oh, never mind. Like, that was just kind of like a
false alarm.
Yeah, false alarm. But it just kept growing and growing, and then I think it was the reality of setting up our daughter's crib and everything, and then realizing like the stability that we were like within, you know, and we didn't know if we were leaving Fargo. Like, there was no next steps at that point. It was just literally like something's changing. And, you know, that night I went downstairs, I remember, and just being very grateful for you, because I felt very like supported and loved, and especially in probably my rawest moment of our marriage.
For sure.
Probably. And I went down and just started to read the Bible, pray, and that was kind of like the inception of like the Genesis 12, the, you know, call to Abraham, go to the place I will show you, and which again obviously is where we're still at. And I think that was like, for me, I don't even just look at that as like, that was when we felt called out of Chi Alpha. That was like a pivot in our life altogether of how we were going to live. I think at that point it was very easy to like seek out comfort and stability and like what's expected, and just kind of like, and that was kind of, for me anyways, and for our family, just God saying, we're going to have you going in a different direction. You got to trust me. I'm going to take you somewhere where I don't have a roadmap, and literally just come along. We'll go.
Yep.
And that's where it's been. And so for the next year, we really kind of prayed through what that was going to be. And shortly after that was when I was offered a job with AO1 to move across the country to New Jersey, or the Philadelphia area. What do you remember from that process? And like, just that really, it was almost a full year from when we kind of sensed like God changing us, something in us, to like making the decision in Kobe's sushi.
Kobe's always makes me cry.
Crying up in sushi.
Why am I crying in Kobe's right now?
Yeah. So what do you remember from that year?
I remember, I mean, it was difficult. Like, it was a hard year because, like, yeah, when you know, like, when you're in something that's comfortable, you don't want to ever leave that. And I remember just, like, whenever we try talking about it, like, we would just get, like, frustrated, or just, like, I was having a hard time, like processing. Like, I'm a super slow processor, you know that, but it was just like I like have to take so much time to like think about things. But I just remember, like, we'd try talking about it, and like you'd share new things with me, and I would just kind of be like almost like in denial that like we could move or like we could leave, and I didn't want to, but I also like didn't want to stand like I don't know, like I just always wanted to be supportive, and like you were like really getting excited, and I was like, yes, like I am too, like this is fun, like everyday adventure, like we love adventure and all that stuff. But like I just remember having a hard time, and just like, but also not wanting to get in the way, or like I don't know, like put my foot down and be like no, because right. I mean, we wouldn't have had our adventure out on the East Coast. And
well, right. And I think that was a huge part of it, was navigating the tension of like feeling a calling and just the humanity of picking up our little family with a less than 1-year-old.
Right.
You know, she just turned 1 when we moved, basically.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember the conversation with your parents, like telling them that was an option, or like it was a possibility, like shortly after your mom had retired. Like, I just remember those things are also vivid to me.
I know.
But I also remember like being at fall retreat, you know, that September. So just a few months after Kinsley was born, and like just something inside of me saying, this is the last fall retreat, at least in that season of our life. And so it was just kind of, I just, our communication, it was hard because I didn't want to push you. Like, we had learned so many things about, I feel like there's almost like context that's needed of earlier on in our marriage, you wanted to do something and I kind of shut you down. And that was a low point for us, like a genuine low point but it was also a high point because it was, I feel like, a trajectory changer for our marriage too. But I had just kind of put my foot down and made like a decision that I thought was the best, and kind of took your voice away. And that was hard. Right. Yeah. Like it's hard. Like I get choked up now because I remember you confronted me on that. And that was for sure, I think the start of like our new communication, at least in our marriage, like growing in that.
I just had to learn, because I mean, personality wise, like I really am kind of just like go with the flow. I remember Pastor Brad in our marriage counseling saying, like, just based off of your personalities, like, Taylor, if you don't speak your opinion, even if you don't feel like you have one or you don't really care, like Steven just naturally, just with his personality, like will walk over you like a doormat.
Right.
And he won't even notice that he's doing it. And so I remember Pastor Brad always being like encouraging me to like, you have an opinion, even if you feel like you don't.
Right.
And you need to share that. And I don't think I did for like at least the first year of our marriage.
Well, but for the first couple years or 3 years, like we didn't have anything big.
Yeah.
Like nothing was big. Like you got a job right out of college. I was already in my job. And then it was just like, where should we live? You know, like, should we live in a house or a townhome?
Yep.
Should we get a dog? That was a big one.
Yep.
No, but that was, you know, so going into that whole situation, like I was being really, like I knew I was in my heart, but it was our family. It wasn't just me. Like we view it as like, what's God doing in our life and our family? And of course there's times where one of us isn't like the idea person on it of like, oh yeah, you know? And so I wanted you to come alongside in your timing. I didn't want to like make a decision for us and say, this is what we're going to do. I was trying to just leave the door open for God to speak to you. And the way we ended up doing that was just not talking about it.
In my mind, it was like if we just like don't talk about it, it goes away, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just not there.
Right.
Like let's just not talk, because every time we would like try talking about it, I would usually shut down.
Yeah.
And it was just like a bummer.
When for me, I don't want to romanticize like a calling. I think that growing up, I think that was always just kind of like, oh, it was like God's fault that anybody did anything.
Yeah.
Where we were making the decision based on what God was like leading us in. And I think for our story, I think maybe from the outside, it would have been easy to see like, wow, like I must have spoke to them each in a dream and just told them, but like, no, that wasn't it. Like I had felt this like really strong before there was a future attached to it, just like something was changing, and you did not. And that was how we had to pray and how we had to like approach it. And
I mean, but you were writing me letters throughout that time, and you would just kind of give me letters. So
well, every time we would talk, it was really hard. Like, and not that, like, but for us, what I started doing, because every time we would talk about it, it would either just not come out of my mouth right, or it was just hard to communicate, like this very complex chapter, you know. And so I'm a writer. Like I love to write. Like that's just how I process and everything. And so I just started writing you letters, and I felt like that was a easier way for me to get everything out. And I remember one of the things was just like, up until this point, our ministry has been like assigned to us. It's the people that we're designated to meet with, or like it's a job title. And there was just like a huge excitement in our new ministry is like the people we meet and like the neighbors that we interact with, and like the people that we just come across in our everyday life. This is our new mission field, you know. Obviously like my job has like a component of that, but that was part of that shift too. In my heart was like, to this point, church ministry had been so defined, and not that church ministry can't be organic, and like, but it was at that point I hadn't experienced that, you know. So it was like a time of feeling called into like a different way of living altogether, you know. And then we were at Kobe's, and you said, so are we going to go to New Jersey or something?
I was just kind of like, can we stop dancing around like what we're going to do? Because it was kind of like we would talk like we were going, but it was never like fully confirmed. And I just was like, can we just define it? Like, are we moving or are we not? And it was like, yep, moving to Jersey. And I was like, all right.
And you, from that point, I mean, like, again, it wasn't always like, everything changed and we were both like, but we just knew we were in it together, and that was like the big thing. And we had this, I mean, incredible support behind us, and, you know, people that were just really encouraging. And obviously the people we were going to work with, you know, we had a relationship with them and stuff. And I was really excited about the work that I was going to be doing. And then we got out there to New Jersey, and the first 6 months was like fast.
Yep.
You were pregnant. Again, that's part of the, we moved when Taylor was pregnant again.
Yeah, that was, I think, what was hard for me. It was like, I'm literally like leaving the comfort of having like help from family and like all that to not having family out in Jersey. And so I think that was the biggest thing. I was like, oh man, how are we going to do this?
Yeah. And we literally just, we got out there and we had the community around us, and we started just like going to church and doing all these things, but it was just kind of fast paced. We had people come out to visit us, family came out, you know, friends came out, and it was probably harder for us to even really adjust. Like, you know, that's how I remember it anyways.
Right.
And then Summit was born in February.
Yep.
3 weeks early.
Yep. 3 weeks early, had a NICU stay, just unexpected. And it was just like a lot.
Yeah.
And then.
And that was another one of those points where Summit was in the NICU, and Taylor and I came home from the hospital without him, and I couldn't sleep. And it was just like, it was another one of those reminders of like God, like his promise, and, you know, it didn't make sense and it was out of my control. And I feel like that's what for us the last 4 years has been, is a loosening of the control that we think that we've had over our life, and just letting God do what God can do.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, that was hard.
Oh, for sure.
I remember literally like just bawling, leaving
We
the
did a lot of
hospital.
that.
A lot of crying, a lot
Yeah.
of tears were shed. And then we stopped at Wawa and I was hungry, so we got mashed potatoes and I'm just like bawling in mashed potatoes on the drive home. I'm just like, this is sad. This
Yeah.
is hard. But so yeah, then we had a 1-year-old and a newborn.
And that was like such a huge part of this whole thing has just been like, of course there'd be another thing that is out of our control that we literally have no way of managing it and working it out. Like, we have to allow God to do what only he can do. And then the pandemic hit and it was like, right going into that job, a huge part of my job was events. We were doing a softball game in Philly, a softball game in North Dakota, 2 fundraising events, one in Philly, one in North Dakota. We were launching our second camp. There's like so many things that were hot on the press for me. And I was fired up. Like, I was super excited. I was in my sweet spot, like work wise. And then the pandemic, at first it was just kind of like, oh, this is nice. Like, having some time. I was an extended like paternity leave. I was home.
We're making whipped coffee, doing all the like pandemic quarantine trends.
When we did, I mean, that was when I did quarantine coffee with friends.
Yep.
Which was the kind of like Instagram live thing that was just kind of like, oh, a fun way to connect with friends and, you know, use this time in a creative way. And that was like the birth of this.
Yeah. Like, for sure.
I would get off those calls and I would be on like cloud 9 and I would tell Taylor, like, I need to do that more. Like, I need to do that.
Yeah, you were thriving.
I feel like the first part of quarantine, when it was just kind of like, how long is this going to be? What's this all about? You know, and we were on the East Coast where it was very shut down. You know, so right away it was just kind of navigating like how we spend our time during this time. But then it was like the reality of this isn't going away. And all those events that I was super excited about, you know, the really the main part of my job was all kind of canceled that first year. And I didn't really know what to do with myself. Like, our foundation, like everyone else, was just kind of like reshifting. We did a lot of refocusing, reshifting, and used it as a time of refining. But just personally, there was just inevitably more free time. Like, everybody was in that place working from home. And for me, it was kind of like the first time of really like slowing down and totally allowing. Our pace of life had slowed down at that point, but like my mind and everything else had kind of stayed the course. What was that, you know, when the pandemic started? You know, we had the baby, we had Summit, and then COVID started. What was kind of your response in that?
I feel like I was just bummed because like a lot of trips, because there was like a trip that was planned that I was going to go back around. I think it was around Easter time, because there was like an event that you were going to be going back for, and I was going to stay in the Midwest for like 3 weeks or something. And I remember just being so sad and just crying because I was like, I just want, and I don't think my dad hadn't met Summit at that point.
Yeah.
Like
only your mom.
Only
and
Sarah and Jonathan were able to come out. Like, because it was one of those things, like, either we're going to have, like, a really newborn baby or I'll be super pregnant when they planned their trip to come out, and Summit came early. And so they got to meet him, but, like, my dad hadn't. And so I was just, like, really sad. And I remember, like, calling, like, my nurse mom friends and being like, if their flights are open, like, would you go? And they're just like, honestly, probably not, because it's such a, we don't know what this virus is and all this stuff. And I just remember being like, okay. Like, all of these trips are planned. And so I think I was sad. Like, I mean, I was just bummed. Also, you know, postpartum, hormonal.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. And so I just remember being like, just bummed. But also just, it was like our new, like, we just, each day was, you just keep going. Keep on keeping on.
But it was so unique in the fact that it was, you know, all those things were canceled. And I know the Paviks were coming out and that got canceled. Like
Mm-hmm.
there were things that weren't on the calendar necessarily, like my parents coming to visit and my brother and sister-in-law coming to visit. There's a lot of those things that were just like gonna happen,
Mm-hmm.
and then learning that all of those things were not going to happen, at least for that time, was really discouraging for both of us.
Right, for sure. Because we
And
definitely missed our family
yeah,
at this point. So when those trips were canceled, it was just like, oh, another thing.
well, and just we had a newborn, and so just the idea of having like the intermittent support of just people coming. I know when your sister and brother-in-law were there and your mom,
Mm-hmm.
it was just like added oomph,
Yep.
It was just energy for us too.
Yep.
And then it was truly after that point, obviously we had our community that was
Mhm.
out there that was very supportive and all
For
that.
sure, for sure.
But we had kind of like, okay, here it is. Here's the four of us. I mean, there was a time where our park across the street was roped off. Like
You couldn't even walk.
You couldn't even walk outside. It was
Yeah.
so extreme out there that like I think that's one thing that like when I have conversations, like our experience of it was just different because the norm was so different.
Right.
And it was so normal to do those things. But, at that time, we just kind of were completely shut in, and
Mhm.
due to the nature of some of work things, like even our close-knit group had to separate.
Mhm.
And we had to follow even more strict protocols because of that,
Mhm.
that if somebody left the group, there had to be testing and quarantining just to even be around each other. And so there was significant amount of times where we would go without really interacting with anybody.
Mhm.
And for me, that was my first like forced slowdown in my life.
Yeah.
And so for me, there was this level of almost God just kind of creating an environment for me to just really experience him in a way that I hadn't allowed myself to. I was getting up really early and just reading, and I was writing, and I was spending time with the Lord. And for me, it was almost like this reawakening of my heart. And, for me, it was a time where like a bunch of dreams were born. I started just filling notebooks with dreams and ideas and things that I felt like were a part of my new calling, beyond just like vocation of job of what I did, but, podcasts and, books and just other things that are still like at the front and center of my
Mhm.
heart and my mind. And it was like giving God the space and the margin to speak to me in a way that I hadn't allowed him to do in a long time. And so that was part of this. And I'm telling this because it's part of our story, because
Mhm.
this period of time for me became like a reawakening and one of the best seasons of my individual personal life, because I was going deeper with God. I was having these things that were coming out of me that I really forgot like were even in me, like just abilities or desires that were just being kind of resurfaced. And
Mhm.
I wrote over a third of the book during that, or probably half of the book during that time. And there's just been so many things. And then on the other hand, there was your experience.
Mhm.
And I don't say that like my experience was good and her response was bad.
Yeah.
It was our response, but it was what really God has been teaching us. So obviously past like just the reality of like things are changing, we're not going to have the
Mhm.
same, but we were isolated at home. And kind of what was that season like for you?
I think it was just like really lonely because I missed family. I missed my friends back home a lot. And so I just remember I feel like I didn't always fully embrace where we were at that time because I was just like, I remember there would be times where I would literally be like, my prayer was like, God, like, your will be done, but like, make that will be us going back home. Like
Right.
I was like trying to like tell God, like, can you just like make this a part of our story? Like, I just really missed family. I missed help. I think that was my thing. I was just like kind of feeling really worn down and like exhausted just being a mom and not having help. I mean, it's one of those things you look back and it's like, it was such a unique season because like we had a baby and then you were just home, and that like does not happen. Right. And so there's like so much good, I think, that came of that, you know, even like obviously on your side, but like even for me, like I had help, like I had you. Well, and, right. Like, you could pop in and help with the kids, but it was just still like, I was just a stay-at-home mom. I didn't work or do anything, and it was just caring for our kids, which was awesome. But that can, when you don't have the ability to like go places all the time or see a lot of people, it can just get really lonely. So I just remember being like really sad, but also like not wanting to like put like your fire out. And so I just was like, because I saw how you were like doing so well, and I was like so excited for you and like actually like cheering you on. But like internally I was like, I'm not doing well, like I'm struggling a lot. But I didn't want to like, I didn't want to make you feel bad that you were doing so well and that you were having all these dreams and like really honing in on like your heart and like where you're at and just like what you're passionate about and everything. So I just kind of was like, I don't know, I was it's the classic like didn't communicate to you because I didn't want to like rain on your parade. And we learned that always is not, it's just not the best way to go about things. Like, you're my person, you know, so I like have to be honest and tell you things, but I just was like afraid to like ruin your oomph.
Well, but I think that's like, that was such a, because I think there was a time where I was oblivious. Like I just,
you were riding high.
You were hiding, you know, you were kind of like hiding the fact, like obviously it was harder. Like, I acknowledged from day one, like obviously for you, it was going to be a different experience than just the differences in a newborn, like for a mother and a father, like it's just vastly different. And to not have that support, to not have that community around it is obviously different. And so like I knew there was like a level, but I didn't know the depths of like the hurt you were experiencing. And then I just, once that kind of came out, again, it was kind of like a seesaw of like, it was eggshells for a while of just, you didn't want to rain on my parade and I didn't want you to rain on my parade. Like I was so excited. And I think what we didn't understand right away was that the tension of your pain and my excitement could live together and like be really beautiful. And even just thinking of your calling and just who you are as a person, to host, to make people feel at home and put people at ease, like you do that like nobody else, to not have that for that significant of amount of time. Like, we didn't even realize that at the time, how significant that was.
Right.
For me, it was like a full-on renaissance of like my writing and things that I could do alone with nobody else around that I hadn't given time to do. And then for you, it was the exact opposite.
Right. Oh, I just always remember like we calling like Ryan Nelson being like, do you want to come over? Like, I will cook ham and like cheesy like hash browns, and I will make like an Easter dinner just so that like someone can come over and we can host someone.
Yeah. Seriously. I mean, it was just,
I was like, anyone?
And that was just kind of, you know, some of our friends weren't living there. They lived away for that period of time, or like half of our core group of friends. And so, it was just so different. And I think nobody really knew how to function in that. Our church at that time was closed, and they closed for over like a year and a half. And so like we were doing online church every Sunday, but people that do online church with young kids, whoa, you know, like we weren't,
it's just not existent.
It was very difficult. And so like, it was just all of those things being uprooted and changed. And like, obviously everybody's dealing with this, and this isn't like a pandemic podcast of like, how did you deal with the pandemic? But honestly, that's just plays a huge part in our story. We didn't expect to move across the country, have our baby, which we did expect, and then all of a sudden have like this
shut down,
jarring experience that everybody was experiencing, but everybody experienced it in a different way. And yeah, I think so. There was a lot of just kind of wrestling and job stuff, was changing all the time of like, what was this going to look like? How are we going to, if we can't do events, what are we going to do? And we came back for Christmas and just had like the most beautiful time with our families, and just being around our families again and our friends, and just having that time with them. And I know going back at that point, we didn't know what was going to be coming around the corner, with my job opening the availability to come back to Fargo. But I know in your heart, you wanted to be back 100%.
Yes. But also like right when we kind of knew that we were going to be coming back, like we were at a different church and that was open, and literally like we jumped into a small group right away. We were like, we don't know how long we're going to be here, but we are just going to like fully throw ourselves into this church. And like we went to the new here class, like to learn all about it, found a small group. And then I started making friends and had like mom friends that I could go hang out with, and we'd have play dates. And then I was actually like, I'm actually kind of sad that we're leaving. Obviously, my heart was like, I want to be home. I want to be close to family. But there was like that element of like, really? Right before we're going to leave?
And that was such like a significant part of it too, was in December, like that was the point of time where we were having some of the hardest conversations of our life again. And, especially around Christmas, like we had made the decision that, and it was like harder than it sounds now, and it sounds dumb, but I would choose you and your like mental health and just like life over a job. So if it meant leaving that job to come back home, we were going to do that. And like, I was preparing myself for that. And I felt for the longest time, like I felt like that was like a failure. And then just started to feel like, putting you in a place and not allowing you to be healthy, and like that would be me failing as a husband and a father. And so it was just like God just doing so much in our life, and then obviously put us in that environment, the new church, like you just explained, just some of the most beautiful friendships and people that we communicate with to this day, and just like really love that are championing us, and people that I've talked to about difficult things. And and they really, that season of that church, shout out True North Church, in Mullica Hill, New Jersey. But we just kind of went in as new people. And that was like a very distinct thing I remember us saying is, we don't know if we're going to be here very long, but let's act like we're going to be here forever. And that's been a part of our kind of motto, or we've tried to. And we went, did all the things. We're really accepted for just who we were. People didn't know who we worked with or any of those things. And that small group was just like exactly what we needed. Relationships. They did this thing where we drew names out of the hat, and that's when we met James and Brooke, and like just some of the best friends that we had out there. And really, it just showed us like the value of church and community, and just being rooted deeply in the church, and not sitting on the fringes, not waiting for anybody else to come find you, but to just like put yourself in those places. And Pastor Jesse really just wanted to get to know us, and invited me into his office, and really just like opened up the whole playbook of their church of like, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is why we do it. And I would just sit in his office and ask him like why questions. And they just, I remember their Easter service being the same as every other service, except maybe they had like a cool like photo booth and some cool stuff in the lobby and stuff, but the service itself wasn't different. And I just asked Jesse, like, most churches really invest in Easter Sunday. Why did you do that? And he said, well, if somebody comes on Easter and it's this big production and there's all these things that are out of the ordinary, and then they come back the next week, what are they going to feel? Like how are they got a false picture of who we are as a church. So why not just act as normal, let the people be the community that draws people in and love people, the way that our church loves people, and that be their experience on Easter, and so it's just a lot of things that at that point in my life, in our life, we didn't, like, we loved the church. We were going to be involved in the church, obviously, but we just didn't know our perspective on a lot of things in the church. And it was like a church that really invited us into changing a lot of things for us. What was that? I mean, what were some of the things that you learned just from being a part of True North and just being involved in that church?
I think it was just, the element of like putting yourself out there and just being like honest of like, I need friends. Like, I need people in my life, and like, I need not just like surface level, like, can we actually like go deep and like talk about real stuff and like struggles, and just like sharing the season of life that you're in with other people is just amazing. And so like Sarah was one of my best friends out there, and we would just like go to the park and we would talk about, we'd shoot the breeze and just talk about random stuff, but then we'd also talk about like hard stuff and like how we're doing, like struggling with anxiety or like dealing with those types of things. And so it was just like such a incredible time where I was like, I feel like it really started showing me like how I viewed church, because I was having a really hard time with church. I think like going out there of just like not really knowing like what my place was or like how to get involved, or just like, it was just like it was a hard season, and so I think it like really stirred my heart knowing that we were coming back of like, I want to like do church and like do like make the experience that I had of like feeling so loved and just like accepted like instantly. Like I was like, I want to bring that with me wherever I go. And so I think it was such a good short time that we were there. What was it, 3-4 months?
Yeah.
But like I learned so much, and we brought that back with us, and like we both were just like so excited to like jump into church again.
Yeah.
And I think like I hadn't felt excitement like that in a long time. And so it was just like, I think fun for both of us, because it was like, how am I going to get like involved in church? Like, what am I going to do? Because obviously like you have your giftings and everything, but I was like, what can I do in church? And so coming back has been just like awesome, being able to kind of hone in on something that I feel like I'm good at.
Well, it really did. There was obviously what we experienced at the church. Like Sundays were great. Like I remember,
I think I cried like every single Sunday.
And the worship was great, and like they were writing song. I remember them writing a song and then DMing them on Instagram, or like Googling the lyrics and DMing like, who is that? And they're like, oh, that was us. We wrote that. And it was just really fun to be a part of that. But then, so like the church experience was great. Like what we felt, the greeters, like the environment, all of that was just like awesome. But for us too, it was repainting of the church as a whole, of like the people. And I think that was one of the things, like we saw it, like we had been a part of something outside of Chi Alpha, because we had that in Chi Alpha, that we saw it in the church and it being so beautiful and so fun. And, we just loved to spend time with those people and whatever else. So, but
they like loved us so well, but they loved our kids so well.
Yeah.
I remember I would always just get emotional because like the kids loved going to church.
For sure.
And like, they just, Summit had his girlfriend that was always in the nursery.
Yes.
His Sage, just like
shout out Sage.
Loved Summit. Like,
when Sage was a senior in high school and asked us if she could babysit. We had not had a babysitter in our entire time out there, and all of a sudden we had somebody seeking that out. Like that was emotional for us. Like that was huge for us.
Are you kidding me?
Like God was just like putting these things in our life, and I know it's interesting, like timing. We're like, wow, why at the end? But I think that was just part of it too. It was kind of like, I think the spark we needed coming back. Like it was, knowing then that we were coming back, like having Sage in our home, she would come over on Saturday nights and she would just hang out with the kids, and she would be a high school girl, like doing TikTok dances in our living room, like not recording herself. Yeah, she was teaching us all the trends and stuff. But I remember her leaving those evenings and us just like beaming, not because like anything crazy happened, but like that was what we were created for. Like as a couple, that's our ministry, is having people in our home and just loving on them together and just being us and letting the kids be the kids. And, you know, and we got to know our neighbors super well at that time, the painters who right when we moved there, they did bring us flowers and made us feel so welcomed.
It was so sweet.
And then their like plumbing burst and they lived in like a different home for like several months during the pandemic. So we didn't see them. But then they came and they just like became they're our New Jersey grandparents, and they just like loved on the kids. And when we were packing and moving, they would take the kids and just, I remember Lauren taking the kids and watching them for a while we were packing, like right before we moved. We went back like
probably
hours later than we said we were going to be.
Yep.
To go get them, and they had people over, and our kids were on laps, and they were all eating dinner together, and we just stayed. We stayed forever, you know, just to like hang out. And like there were so many things that we can look at that season of our life and see the negative, and then there's also the positive.
Yeah, so much positive.
But I think that's what I've learned is like I think in my past, I would have probably tried to just sugarcoat it and go, look what God did. And he did that. But to see the negative and the positive is, I think, life.
Yep. Like that's normal. Good and bad.
Yeah.
Can coexist.
I don't feel like you don't need to be profound, but if there's anything that you learned in just that season of just lumping that in together, you know, we as young adults, we did not have like our graduate college, get jobs, move away, you know, experience life like that. Like we were in our late 20s when we started, or I was in my late 20s, you know, I robbed the cradle, but you know, so we were just later in life kind of experiencing like all that change, all that transition at a time of history that was insane. But what do you feel like you learned from that?
I like how you like told me like you don't have to be profound, because like going into this, I'm like, babe, you're not gonna expect profound from me, because that's like not.
And I just said I just want real. Like let's just be real.
Oh man, just from our time out in Jersey, I feel like, I mean, there's a lot that was learned, and I think a lot of it I didn't process until I was out of it, because again, like I've said, slow processor, it takes me a long time to like process what's going on or how I feel. But I feel like the biggest thing I could take away from that is just like knowing like, one, God is constant, he's steady. And even if I'm feeling emotional all over the place, not doing well mentally, all the things, like I know that I can turn to God, because no matter what's going on, he's constant. He's never failed us. He's never going to. Right. He's always provided for us. But also just sorry, I'm just like
all good.
Just leaning into the people that you have too is like so important, because I couldn't imagine being out there without you, you know, just like my person, even though our experiences were so different, but like we made some of our favorite memories out there. And so I feel like, yeah, just leaning into who God has in your life and like just live life.
Yeah. But just live life.
And that's it, everybody. Just live life.
But you know, I love that. I think I learned just like one, I already mentioned it, but to give God control, I think that's something that's easy to say, you know, God is sovereign, like just trust him, you know?
Right.
But we were just put in a lot of environments that cause that. And now I feel like, not that we crave it or like, oh yeah, but I feel like it's just a new part of us. And I think some people don't always understand. Like, I think, you know, not in like a we see ourselves being in Fargo for a long time. Like we'd be pretty surprised. Like we want to build the community that's here and all that. But like, I think there's just so many things that are out of, it's hard for us to say like, all right, this is our 3-year plan. This is our 5-year plan. This is our 10-year plan.
Right.
Like we're just excited to just keep walking together. And I feel like we've learned a lot about marriage and parenting and
expectations.
Yes.
I feel like that's another huge thing that I learned was just like, I just had, even just like with Summit being born, I was like, oh, like my mom's going to be there and we're going to go on walks and we're going to do this. But like, that didn't happen because he had the NICU stay and all those things. And just like what I expected going out there just looked different. And it wasn't bad, but it was just like a learning to accept different circumstances and how to deal with expectations.
Yeah. And I feel like it was like, not that we weren't one by any means, but it was a convergence of, because our experiences were so different, it was fun to seek like God together through that. And because I was just at a point in where I wasn't just like praying, God, change her, like make her enjoy this. It was like, God, use me to like comfort her, and it wasn't every day. Like there was frustration, obviously, like we've always talked about that, but like that was kind of the change in my heart was like, help me to comfort her, help me to champion her, help me to see the good, things in her and encourage her and, and all those things. And so like our marriage just kind of converged in a way that it really hadn't before. And like our pace of life, our just desires for what family looks like changed. We had a picture of what church can look like. We had a picture of what neighbors can look like. And all those things happen because of that difficult season, that it's easy to summarize as like a really challenging season of life. But I think that's where God really likes to do his best work, is in the uncomfortable, scary places.
For sure.
Yeah. Thanks for being in life with me. I'm sorry it's a little different than we always expected. But that was actually something I was going to mention. I remember it was in a conversation where, because when we got married, when we were dating, you always said my dream job was to be a stay-at-home mom. And like that was my dream. And obviously, like to this day, that's a huge part of your life. Like you're home with the kids full-time 3 days a week, and obviously we enjoy that, and you're an incredible mom and have rocked that. But I remember like that was part of it. You were home with the kids, and I just remember Taylor, this is your dream, like trying to encourage you. But I remember you said sometimes dreams change. And I know it seems like funny, like it was probably a heated moment.
But yeah.
But if you looked at like I wasn't giving you the grace for like God to like realign your heart as you were for me. And so just, yeah.
I remember coming back before we left. It was like, I love our kids and I love being a stay-at-home mom. But for my mental health, when we move back, I'm going to find some part-time work.
Yeah.
And now I have part-time work and it's amazing.
Yes. And you have people that you get to be around every day.
Yes. I get the best of both worlds, I think.
Yeah. And so I feel like if I'm trying to think if somebody's listening to this, like what's the takeaway? Like some of these episodes have been very concrete. Yeah. But I think that was what we did our plan going into it was, as much as you were a guest on the podcast, like we wanted a chance to like verbalize this together, because I can communicate it in a way that I think can sometimes make people not see the full story, And so if you're listening though, and I think whatever your takeaway is, I think there's so many things that we can really like think about in this, and not everything in life is going to be like just rosy and handed to you. But I think that's where God is really calling all of us into, is that adventure, of just following him. Like following him was never promised to be like a 1-2 step process and all your dreams come true. It's usually actually the opposite. It's surrendering your dreams and surrendering your comfort and surrendering the things that you feel like are most important in order for him to have his will. And that is so much better. And we wouldn't, like, not everything in our life is like perfect and awesome, but we realize that God's presence is there, and that is perfect and awesome.
Absolutely.
So
that was good.
I would love to hear like what your takeaway from this conversation. Like, it was so, yeah, we've obviously talked about it for the last couple of years, like we've processed it out, but I don't think we've really actually sat down, just the two of us, and like really talked and discussed it. So no, I just appreciate you. One question I ask everybody, and I need to ask you too, but if you were to give advice to 20-year-old Taylor, what would it be?
20-year-old Taylor? Where was I at when I was 20?
You don't have to.
I don't even remember how old I am right now. I always struggle.
You were in college. But
was I graduating?
It's more so like just
Steven's like, don't overthink it. I go, but that's who I am.
It's more like, you're just transitioning into young adulthood, graduating college. It doesn't need to be like super specific, but like, what advice would you give to yourself?
Why do you ask everyone that question? That's so like, that's such an intimidating question.
Nobody else is freaked out.
Nobody else, just me. Oh man. Okay. Do better. Taylor, do better. Can my advice be don't overthink?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Well, that, but also, okay, probably just with, my mindset being on literally thinking our life was mapped out and planned out, that you can't live in that. You have to be willing to just like roll with the punches, because that's what life is going to give you. It's going to give you a lot of punches, and some of those punches just lead you into really fun adventures that are fun but also not fun, and you learn a lot and you grow a lot. And I think it's just about being flexible and just, like I've said a few times, just live life. Just keep on keeping on.
Keep it on.
Never let them see you sweat. So
that's actually like the opposite of our mantra.
Keep on keeping on.
No, never let them see you sweat. We're like, just invite them into the sweat.
Like we're dripping. So sweaty.
Thank you. Love you. It was a lot of fun. You're the best wife and mom, and wouldn't have any other adventure partner in the world. So.
Oh, thanks.
And thank you for listening and being
for the
a part.
People at home.
For being a part of the podcast. If you're listening or watching, our prayer is that this would impact you in some way. So we hope this can be an encouragement to you, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.